bit about the distillery and myself. So, Limestone Branch, my brother and I started in 2000 and basically 2011. We started a little bit earlier, but we actually started distilling in 2011. And then, in one of the goals that we had was to bring one of our family brands back into the family. And so in 2015, we partnered with Luxco, and they had owned the Yellowstone brand. And Yellowstone was actually founded by a great great uncle of mine on my mother's side. So everybody hears the name Beam and thinks that they're where my uh, bourbon lineage comes from, but it equally on my mom's side from the Dant family. And the Dants were big distillers, probably bigger than the Beams right around right before and right after Prohibition. Uh, so uh, yeah, so Yellowstone, but Yellowstone had always been a Beam and Dant collaboration. Uh, so from the very beginning, the the Beams were distillers up until the 1970s, actually. So yeah, we were celebrating our 150th anniversary this year, and that's 150 continuous years. So not a lot of people can say that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's I'm really honored to be the steward at this moment in time. I think my grandparents and ancestors would be very, very proud of the fact that one of the family members is back in charge of the brand. Uh, so we did that in 2015. The first thing we're going to taste tonight is the minor case. And so minor case is actually named after my great grandfather, who was Minor Case Beam. And that was Jim Beam's first cousin. They all had distilleries before Prohibition. Actually, his distillery, if you look at the Yellowstone bottle, Minor Case Beam's distillery is on the Yellowstone bottle because right before Prohibition, he sold his distillery to my mom's family, and they made Yellowstone at. They had a distillery right next to it, so they made Yellowstone at both distilleries. So that distillery site and is quite meaningful to me. And my brother and I wanted to pay tribute to Minor Case, who was the oldest of that generation, and he was very significant in the training of many, many distillers that would go on to work at uh, Stitzelweller, Michner's, Maker's Mark, Four Roses, um, Yellowstone, uh, many, many others. That whenever you hear of a Beam that was at a distillery that wasn't Jim Beam, that was our family. So, so although Craig and Parker and Earl were also from the Jim Beam clan, Joseph, who was the first Beam at Heaven Hill, that was Minor Case's brother. Actually, helped found Heaven Hill. So we wanted to do a tribute to him, and so we did this rye, which is a 2-year rye, and it's finished in cream sherry casks. The cream sherry is actually works very nicely with the rye, but is a sweeter than imported sherry. And this comes from Myers Winery in Cincinnati, Ohio. So it's a cream sherry that they've made for many, many years. It's their award-winning cream sherry, and we were able to secure enough barrels to produce this on a continuing basis. So if you want to, for me with the nose, if you pick up the sherry notes right off the bat, so you get dark fruit notes, things that you wouldn't normally find in a rye. And then when you sip through, you get a little bit of that spiciness from the rye on the front end, and then it generally finishes to the mid and finish with the sherry notes, those being dark fruit notes and a little bit sweeter finish as well. I think it's a great sipping whiskey. I particularly like this when it's warm outside because it's just a really light, fruity whiskey and very inviting. It's a great Manhattan because the sherry works very well with the vermouth and the Manhattan. So it's a very versatile whiskey. I particularly like it just neat on a warm day. But a lot of our Scotch drinkers will like this because of the sherry notes are familiar with them. Excuse me.
So you said it's a 2-year-old, and how long was it in the sherry casks?
It stays in the sherry cask about 4 to 5 months.
4 to 5 months.
Yes, and the sherry cask.
Normally,
go ahead.
Normally, on a 2-year, you'd get a little bit more of that green apple-y kind of oaky flavor,
Right.
And it really doesn't have that. I mean, it's really pretty good.
Yeah, that takes
being young.
Yeah, that and the barrels that the cream sherry goes in is actually American bourbon barrels. So it's bourbon barrels that the cream sherry's put in. It stays outside on the yard in Cincinnati in the weather for 4 or 5 years, and then they dump them, and then we get those casks.
So they're getting beat up pretty good, seeing a lot of seasonal change, pulling a lot of cannons out of that barrel. Because for me, when I get it, it's a nice sweetness. It's not an overly cloying sweetness. It's like really interesting. It pulls me to the next dimension of the whiskey because it seems to have probably 4 or 5 layers from what I can detect just getting into it now. That it keeps trying to give you a different thing to pull out of the taste or from the nose. It's just well assembled, and hats off to you guys.
Well, thank you. And we are making the change to a 4-year rye.
Wow, interesting.
And so that just makes it a little deeper and richer. You still get those sherry notes, but the rye comes through a little bit more. And it's 51% rye. Most ryes are out there are 75 to 95% rye. This is 51% rye, 45% corn, and 4% malt.
It's amazingly complex for the short time it's been alive.
Well, thank you, and like all my finishes, and you'll see that with the limited edition as well. I try to do them with a relatively light hand so that it's not covering up the whiskey. It just kind of complements and gives some extra dimension to the whiskey that you might normally find in that kind of spirit.
It's very well balanced.
Yeah, it doesn't take over is what I think is really the coolest part about it. Because to your point, like, put this in a cocktail, it's not going to sweeten it up. It's just going to kind of make it a little bit fatter, but at the same time, give it something that pulls it in, and you actually know that it's something different. Well, what's the secret recipe? Well, but I also have to say hats off to you, Stephen. Your family's done a lot for this industry, and seeing you guys carry on with the lineage is something really cool to me as someone who's been doing this a long time, but also just appreciating the history and the quality of the standards that your family's bring you guys are carrying on. So
yeah, it's pretty amazing. I'm fortunate to have been born in a family like that, and to be able to live at a time when it's possible for me to operate a distillery.
Yeah.
In the 1960s, 70s, it was very, very difficult.
Those are lean times.
Yeah, very lean.
High interest.
Can you speak to the history of Yellowstone a little bit as a brand? I mean,
sure.
I know a little bit about it. I mean, and I love to fly fish out of the park, but I understand the legacy of it. But I mean, I'd love to know more of the deeper look into the brand.
Yeah. So Bernard Dant was J.W. Dant, who was a pioneer distiller, his oldest son. And he opened the distillery in Gethsemane, Kentucky. And as a matter of fact, like I said, it was about 100 yards down the railroad track from Minor Case Beam's distillery. And they were of the same age, and they were great friends. And so he opened his distillery, and he was supplying Taylor and Williams, which was a rectifier in Louisville. J.B. Dant was, not Minor. And that's where all of his whiskey was going. And Taylor and Williams had a salesperson who was traveling out west, and they came back. The guy's name was Charles Townsend. We even know that. And he came back and said, everybody was very excited about this new national park. It's America's first national park. It's going to be a really big deal. And if we brand one of our bourbons Yellowstone, we're going to sell a lot of whiskey. So they branded one of the bourbons Yellowstone, and it quickly became their best-selling bourbon. And then it became their best-selling bourbon, and they were selling so much that they actually bought Minor Case Beans Distillery and made Yellowstone at both.
So now,
mine,
part of circulation at any time. I mean, it seems like it's versions like in that label to me was like, wow, this brand's back. You know, it's like
right. It was. It never closed for Prohibition. Well, the distillery closed, but they sold their stock through Prohibition, and Brown-Forman actually licensed the brand.
Got it.
So it's actually sold under the Brown-Forman portfolio during Prohibition. After Prohibition, they built a massive plant in Louisville, Kentucky, moved from Gethsemane to Louisville, and it was sold out of the Dant family in 1944. And that is when Glenmore and the Thompson family bought it. And they had it until 92 when they sold it to United Distillers.
Yep.
And United quickly merged with Guinness and became Diageo. And Diageo didn't want to have anything to do with bourbon. So they closed the distilleries and sold off all the brands. And
yeah,
that is
amazing missteps in this business. I mean,
yeah.
I talked to you offline about it. I mean, it's just, I'm sure we both have some great stories, but seeing the fact that you guys carry this lineage forward and everything else is awesome. I guess the last one that I'm going to ask you, I'm going to jump all over and keep on asking you. You want to answer? What was the inspiration on the artwork on the label?
Where did everybody go? Hold on.
Okay. You and me, dude.
There you go.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hit something and everybody disappeared. So,
was there an inspiration or an artist that was commissioned for that label? Because it's beautiful artwork.
The label is if you go back to 1872, that is the very close to the original label.
Wow.
You know, the logo, Yellowstone logo, has not been changed. The waterfall. We did have an artist redo the waterfall, but it's very similar because we wanted it in color, but it's very, very similar to what was on there. If you go back to the original 1872 bottles, you'll see it. And I'm sure they did have, someone produced the logo, but we don't have any record of that.
Thank you.
I do know that the guy who did the Coca-Cola logo was in Louisville. So,
Steve, I've always wanted to ask you this. So this recipe that you have for Minor Case is from your Dant side of family or Beam?
This is a MGP recipe.
Okay.
Very, very close to what our recipe was. We carried 10% malt.
Okay.
And theirs is 4% malt.
Oh, you had 10% malt in original. Oh, that would have been great.
Yeah.
Very.
And that we'll try to do that at some point. But
what do you guys have? What's your age now with your own distiller?
We released a 6-year not too long ago, and that took most of our 6-year, and so we'll do that again at some point. But when we first started out, we were just making, a couple barrels a week, then a barrel a day, and then a couple barrels a day. So we never really had that much of older spirit. The last 2 years, we have been increasing. We're up to about 8 barrels a day now. And we can, with the current stills that we have, we can do about 10 if we're running at 100% efficiency. So,
what kind of stills are you guys using? Out of curiosity.
We have a 1,000-gallon Vendome stripping still, and then we have a 600-gallon. It's a Trident that we use for our finish still. So it's double pot distilled.
Nice.
And yes,
Steve, how many barrels does one run produce at your distillery?
We'll get about 2 barrels, just shy of 2 barrels.
Okay,
Right around.
That's per run, right?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yes, go ahead.
so Keith, any observation on how do you like minor case?
It's a very unique rye. For a 2-year rye, I never drank anything that smooth.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
saying.
I mean the stone fruits show up right in the middle of it. It has a clean finish. Like you said, I mean it's a very good sipping. Like I would drink in the summer, very
Yeah.
easy. And I think in a Manhattan it won't overpower it. It'll do pretty well. I mean, I quite like it, but my issue is I don't think I ever seen this in New York yet.
Yeah, it's in New York.
Is it New York?
You
Okay.
might have to look for it a little bit harder, but it is there.
Okay.
Ask your favorite liquor store and they can get it.
Okay. I will. I probably will.
Even
And
if
I'm pretty sure we're with Southern in New York.
is it in Alabama yet?
Yes. Minor cases in all 50 states, but
Okay.
it's not as widespread as Yellowstone.
Actually,
Is it
minor case was
considered-
what? Sorry.
I was just gonna say, is it considered allocated? Because
No.
we're a controlled state, so
No, it's not allocated
Okay.
at all. And so in Alabama, they transfer between stores. So you should be able to find it there.
Minor
Irony
case
is
was
in
what?
North Carolina. North Carolina
North-
is such an allocated state, but we've got all your Yellowstones. I love it.
Yeah, with North Carolina, they've been very good to us, so we can't complain about that with the control state. So,
No, I mean, minor case was what introduced me to Steven because I liked minor case so much. I went looking for who was making minor case, and that's how I landed up at his distillery. I mean, I was surprised for a 2-year-old rye. It was such a smooth. I mean, it was one of the finest ryes I've eaten. Young ryes that I've tried, and the finish never overwhelmed the base spirit. So that's precisely why I'm a big fan of minor case.
well, the 4-year is going to be you'll enjoy. That is really great. So I'm excited to get that out. And, that is because of the success in Europe for minor case. We actually sell as much minor case overseas as we do, almost as much as we do in the States. So that's pretty amazing. And but
I would imagine that would do very well in Japan,
we've been running into
just because of the
problems.
flavor.
Yeah, we've been running problems with the Europeans. The Scotch people don't want us to call it whiskey because it's 2 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
And somebody else, a big brand over there, owns another thing that we're competing with that happens. They don't like it. So, but we are changing it to 4, and that will solve that problem.
There you go. When's that one coming out?
That is coming out. This should be. We're changing over now, so it should start showing up in the first quarter of next year as distributors run through their stock.
Gotcha.
And how long is that finished in sherry cask?
It's about 4 or 5 months.
Same. Okay.
Yeah. That seems to be about where I'm usually at.
And same proof, 90 proof, right?
90 proof.
Okay.
And
So
there may be some single barrel minor case out there at some point. We don't know.
Oh,
Nice.
That would be
Do you
very
know where
nice.
hey Steve, do you know where the grains are sourced?
The upper Midwest. It's MGP, which I used to have to say it was sourced, but I don't have to say that anymore
Mhm.
because we're all one big happy family.
Yeah.
No, it's
Should
been
we
great
go on to
for us so far, so can't complain.
Should we
No,
move on to Yellowstone?
Yellowstone. Okay. So we talked about the history. Like I said, it was sold. Diageo closed the distillery in 92. Luxco bought it and kept bottling it until 2015 when I took over, and then we reblended it and relaunched it again. But it never stopped being sold. It reduced the amount of states considerably. It was like 6 or 8 states, I think, sold in from the 90s until 2015. And then, of course, bourbon was on the skids kind of at that time too. So we got back in with them at the right time. And so Yellowstone is a blend of 4 and 7-year-old bourbon, not 4.2, but 4 and. It has some of ours in, which is not a lot, I'll be honest with you, because we didn't make a lot. So, but it does have ours in, as well as barrels that I source from Luxco stock. So it's a blend of 4 and 7-year-old, 93 proof. I chose 93 proof because that's what I thought it shined out of this particular blend, out of the bottle neat. So 93, when we introduced it, the salespeople came back and said it needed to be 100. Everybody wanted 100 proof. And I tasted back through it again. And there's just too much ethanol at 100, and 93 really worked well. So that's where we kept it.
Yeah, I think it's got a great body to it, but if you went up that high, you would dry that thing out so much that all those good undercurrents and tones to it. But at 93, I still like the fact that if I want to sip it neat, or if I put it in a cocktail or whatever it is, it's still going to have that backbone to stand up proof-wise, but the flavor is still there compared to if you got 100, a little bit more of that just to proof it up. And
for me, it's very classic Kentucky bourbon. You know, you get the from the 4-year-old, you get a little bit of the grain notes that come through. That helps it stand up in a cocktail as well. And then you get more of the mouthfeel and finish from the 7. Of course, the classic caramels and vanillas, a little bit of spice from the rye. And for me, it's a great workhorse on the back of the bar because it stands up in a cocktail. You can drink it neat or on the rocks. So just kind of an all-purpose bourbon. Yeah,
to your point about the spice, like back half of the palate, I kind of pick up like a really cool, and I don't know if anyone's ever said this to you, but like a really cool kind of French toast quality. You know, it's like a little bit of cinnamon and nutmeg.
That's what I was getting. I was like, this almost tastes like a syrup that I would put on a pancake at the end. You know, it would. I don't know. It's got that. It's got a good flavor.
Thank you. Yeah, and you know, with the proof, that 93 proof, when we do our single barrel picks at Limestone, they can pick 3 different proofs, and each barrel kind of changes, you know. So I think whiskey really does have a proof that it kind of shines at. And with our single malt, we're going to introduce a single malt in the spring.
Wow.
And when I was tasting through it, you know, marketing had come through and they had put it at 100 proof. Of course, they say whatever you decide is what we'll do the proof at. And so I said, well, let's start it at barrel strength, and I'll just keep adding a little bit of water and, you know, doing some tastings until I find where I like it. And I liked it at 108 proof, and that's where we stopped. If we went below 108, it kind of was washed out, and it really shone at 108. So excited about that one as well. But getting back to the bourbon, you know, for me, it just it's a classic Kentucky bourbon that I remember being in our house when I was younger. So I hope everybody likes
Steve,
that. Yes.
How your barrels? What are they aged?
What are our barrels that are ours?
When you're yeah. So when you're putting in, I guess the minor case, or we're working on still right now, right? So how old are the barrels themselves that you're throwing it into, or
Of the minor case?
Yeah,
like the finished barrels. Gosh, they would have had to been at least a 4-year-old bourbon, and then dumped, and then spend 4 or 5 years in with sherry before we put back into the minor case back into it for 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a smooth. Surprisingly, even it's a lower proof that helps it, but I mean, it really is smooth for being 2 years and change, and then the finishing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm real happy with it. Real proud of Minor Case.
Hey, Steve, how big are your sherry butts? Just out of curiosity.
The sherry butts are actually ex bourbon barrels, so they're 53 gallons.
Okay, so they're not a huge one, so they're getting
No.
they're getting moving around pretty well.
Yeah, and like I said, they sit outside in Cincinnati on the back lot at Myers Winery, outside in the elements.
So
Sun, shade, rain,
moving
snow.
it, circulating it, it just sits out there and bakes a little bit, kind of just brings it back in, and right. I mean, because 6 months, I mean, it's still imparting flavor, but it's not sit there. Have you played around with anything longer? Just out of curiosity.
It starts to get too much about the sherry for my taste.
Okay.
You know, I like to keep finishes light. Honestly, that's my personal preference. So.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of finishing in anything other than sherry? Coming up with a different
With Minor Case,
rye recipe with a different finish.
it's possible. We've been honestly we've been focusing on Yellowstone, and Minor Case has been kind of a second to Yellowstone, but we are paying a little bit more attention to it now. And it's growing on its own without any attention. So you know we plan to start giving it some attention as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, overall, the thing that I like about it is it's sippable, it's drinkable, it's crushable, but at the same time, you got that dimension. But you know, taking it up and trying to play with it. I mean, if you can get Midwest sourced wine barrels that way, maybe. But I think the whole thing is that your ecosystem is so Midwestern centric. You know, with Cincinnati being right across the line and everything else, I think it's really a cool part of your story where you're not only just doing your whiskey. You know, you've got the winery right there too. And granted, I mean, Ohio is still a very interesting wine growing region, but it's not like it's, you know, pulling something out of a California AVA that, you know, someone else is trying to do. I mean, like,
Right.
I think it's really rad.
You know where the first commercial winery in the United States was in Kentucky, right across the river from there in Cincinnati, in that river valley right there.
Were they growing Catawba or what are they doing?
No, and I forget honestly what kind of grapes they were growing, but it wasn't Catawba, but that was the first successful commercial winery in the United States.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of crazy, but
Oh, I love Myers. It's owned by Paul Lux from the same family. Yeah, the Lux family. Yeah.
Right. Which is one of the reasons we have access to the barrels so easily.
Yeah.
Nice. It's always nice to know people, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, they're great people. I mean, you should go to Myers. Amazing. I mean, they get sampling stuff. Everything's great there.
When I first went, I was like, my God, this is massive. I mean, it is a massive winery. So you wouldn't think of something like that being in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah.
So let's go to the limited edition. So as many of you know, but each year I do a limited edition. Some years it is finished. Other years it is, I just do blends of different aged whiskeys. The last 3 years have been finished, and they are they were finished. Okay, so I started with Armagnac, then Amarone, and then this year is Marsala wine cask. And when I pick, we use barrel brokers, so we have a limited accessibility what we can use. So I'll pick what he has available, and what I'll normally do is go to a liquor store and buy some of that spirit or wine, and just put a few drops into our 7-year-old and see how it mingles, if the flavors are starting to work right. And if they do work right, then we'll move forward into testing them out as a cask. So and so both Armagnac and Amarone worked well. And Marsala, what I really liked, I was a little hesitant because in the States, Marsala doesn't have a great reputation, although there are some very fine Marsala wines. And but when I tasted the samples, I was like, this is really good, and we'll let the whiskey speak for itself. So we have 7 and 12, mainly 12-year-old bourbon in the. There's a little bit older in there, but mainly 7 and 12-year-old bourbon that we mix, then blend, and put into the finish in the Marsala wine cask. And they were about 4 months. They weren't quite 5. They were right, if I remember correctly, just shy of 4 months.
Okay, so they spent 4 months in Marsala cask.
Correct.
So real quick, as much as I want to hit pause and get on Uber Eats and find someone to deliver chicken Marsala to my house, and
That's not the same thing.
Wait, can I get out of this thing and no one notices that I'm gone and they have chicken Marsala? But Stephen. So I mean, obviously, I mean, it's you're making very what I would call artistic whiskeys with artistic license and everything else. And I get the whole drop into the liquid and everything else. How much do you test it, like, to figure out, like, if you're going to go 4 or 5 or even 6 and, get your ratios and everything else? I mean, is that a pretty detailed process, or is it something you kind of...
Well, like I said, when I first start, I just start by dropping some samples of the like Marsala wine into our 7-year-old bourbon. And then if it passes that test, that they seem to mingle well, then we'll do a cask. But like on the finished product, I'm testing at first every other week, and then it's down to every week. And then it's a judgment call when you stop. It's like, will it be better 2 weeks from now, or is it best now to stop? Will it be done 2 weeks from now? Because you can't come back.
That's right.
So
Well, have you had to put a dosage into one to try to bring it back up? Or, I mean, is it just pretty much like once it's there, you just know you're going to yank it and you're just done?
So far, we've been fortunate. That's the way we've done it.
Yeah.
When it's done, we yank it and it's ready to go. And
so the LE, what's the mash bill? What's the age? I apologize if I missed it.
On which one?
Limited edition.
Limited edition is 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malt. That's our standard mash bill. And that is 7 and 12, and I think there's some 14 in there as well, but mainly 7 and 12-year-old bourbons that we blend, then finish in the cask.
Is that still mostly MGP, or is it some of your stuff as well?
No, it's all Kentucky bourbon. And we don't have it
Okay.
7-year-old, so it's not ours. But it comes from Lux Coast Stocks, and they have bought from several different distilleries over time. But it is 100%. Yellowstone has always been 100% Kentucky bourbon, and will, from discussions we've had, it will always remain 100% Kentucky bourbon. Although the single malt is a MGP rye. Single malt, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Do you guys make any unfiltered?
Our single barrels are unfiltered because we just dump them and we take one barrel, dump it into a stainless barrel, and just filter it. Well, filtered with a string filter like you would use in a water filter.
Yep.
Yeah, Steve, the last session I had half bottle. It tastes even better with a lot of air in it. Airing it out, it's brought out a lot of sweetness. Amazing wine. I mean, the wininess has gone down a bit.
Right. Yeah, this one does. Even when you pour it, if you let it open a little bit, it will tame down. Some of the.
I'm getting.
That's the same thing that Coco. when I got into it, and then even when I added a little bit of water, it softened the wine, but it actually integrated it all, so I can get the oil and everything else, and it became much more, I would say, like a blossomy kind of wine addition to it, not as much drivey. But overall, I mean, like the integration is there, but with any wine, I mean, you get some air on it and everything else. I mean, I think it's really interesting that you say that, because that's exactly where I would put this. Like, if I was going to drink this and actually like share it with friends, if you're coming over and going to sit on my deck and hang out, I wouldn't be afraid to open this thing up a half an hour before, or even decant it into a small, have something kind of cool to go with it as I share the story. It's awesome.
Is anyone else getting chocolate? I don't know. Last time I didn't, but today I'm getting a lot of chocolate. I'm surprised.
I'm getting some chocolate for sure.
Yeah, I'm feeling like really nice dark chocolate in my mouth. I'm surprised, because last week when we did the session, I didn't get as many. I mean, I didn't get chocolate notes at all. Today I'm getting a lot of chocolate.
I think that's with a lot of whiskeys, though. It will definitely change in the bottle with air in the bottle, for sure.
Yeah.
So I get fruity on the nose, and then the dry oakiness from the older bourbons, I think, and I could pick that up pretty good on there. And then on the taste, I get at towards the end, it gets that dry note from the wine, I think, and a little bit of the older aged oak, and I like it. It's very good. I think it's a very good mix.
Steve, the oak softens up if you leave the bottle half empty.
I don't like to leave bottles half empty too long.
Sounds like
I never have that problem.
Yeah, I think they do lose. As more air goes, they'll eventually start to lose flavor. What happens is they lose the subtleties.
Mm-hmm.
You'll still have the bulk, but you'll lose subtleties if it sits too long. In our older bottles at the distillery that we had, that we'll have like some dusties that we'll have on the distillery bar, we put glass marbles in them to keep the headspace low.
Wow, that's cool.
But today this feels like $1,000 whiskey. I don't know. This is like, today is, I mean, maybe don't leave it half empty for too long, but a week should be a good.
I was going to say, now whenever I have a half-drunk bottle of whiskey,
Akiba here has very good palate, so I want to hear from him. What does he have to say? Akiba. Oh,
Yo. I'm here.
Yeah, I know. I said you have one of the finest palates in the group, so I want to hear what you say.
Oh, crap. I'm out. No, I didn't catch the chocolate at all, but I was incredibly favorable with it. The LE was yummy. It was very much more favorable. A little bit of proof. I enjoyed that, but I'm honestly, I don't have anything for you. I'm sorry.
Steve, why don't you why do you keep your LE at 101? Why don't you go a little higher on your LEs?
Maybe candy corn. I got the corn. That's what I got. Sorry.
I really like the whiskeys around 100 proof. I really do. And so I think that's works for us right now.
Yeah, because your barrel entry is 109, right?
109 or 115.
115, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Coco, I wouldn't call it dark chocolate, but I keep on coming back to it. And I'm just past mid palate, I'm getting call it powdered hot chocolate. Like if you let it cool in the fridge and you still get that creamy chocolate good, but then it kind of dissipates again and goes back into those fruity esters and the oak, which it almost is like that drives it. So you don't have to worry about getting a bunch of vanilla, and that takes your sweetness in and actually takes you to the back end. And actually it's like almost like a 2-volume book. Like, I mean, once you get past that, the whiskey changes so much that it actually drives you into a totally different experience. but it's definitely there. I think at the same time too, it's like you get into some of these limited releases, and Stephen, this is a compliment to your artistry. I mean, you get into too high proof or over oaked and everything else. I mean, it seems like you're paying real close attention to detail, and you've got a real fine distillate that you're starting with. So,
for using a 12 and a 14 on the oak, it's perfectly balanced, I think.
Right.
Are you a lower char, Stephen, or is it like a 3? I mean,
number 3 char.
Yeah.
Number 3 char.
This plays so well. Now I want to go and chase a couple of bottles for myself. This is today this has taken my experience to a different level. So now I'm going to chase and stock on, because I know, or maybe I'm planning to drive down sometimes in January. So I'll probably stop by and grab a couple from your bar.
Cool. Yeah, almost like on the back end, like a Nutella chocolate.
Yeah, that's what I Nutella is the right word. Yeah, I'm getting that Nutella. Harshal, what do you have? Harshal, what are you getting?
Same. I was just gonna say Nutella chocolate-ish, and it's got a nice finish to it.
Oh yeah, the finish is medium long, really nice.
Oh, it's long. It's long. I mean, it stays with you for a long time.
My wife is going to love this because she loves anything that has a nice thick chocolatey finish. So I need to grab 2 bottles, not 1.
No, you probably need 3.
Don't leave them half full. Don't leave them half full.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to find. I mean, I'll have to. The only way I can get it is drive down to the distillery, because if I look around there, I mean, the secondary market has completely ruined the game for bourbon drinkers, actually.
Oh yeah,
yeah, it is.
Sure.
It is around here for sure.
Yeah.
Not as bad
the
in
noses.
Florida as in North Carolina, though.
I'm definitely bringing this in my store though.
Yeah, you better get a couple and reserve a few for me.
Yeah, Stephen, I will definitely attest to the fact that on a warm night, it's good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely warm night.
Oh.
So this limited edition here, when was this one released?
It was released in August.
In August, so it
Yeah.
should be here by now.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, but Steve, the problem is most retailers have jacked up the price 3x because this is really limited, and I think it's gotten a lot of traction. I was trying to look for it now, and I see the price at 3 times the retail.
Really?
Yeah, I'm seeing online, and it's 3 times the retail. So
I was just in a store 2 weeks ago in California, in San Jose, and they had the Amarone on the shelf for $110. First, I was surprised they even had any, and then that at that price.
yeah, that's surprising because Amarone was, it was last year's release was equally good.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
but
can.
This one I'm seeing,
find things out. So you can occasionally find things out there in the wild. I see them.
Yeah.
Every once in a while.
It's all a matter
The
of
lowest the lowest I see is somewhere called in New York, but they won't ship here.
I mean, I'm that the biggest thing that I learned tonight is, I mean, if I see any of these labels in the wild, I think I would be happy and very much pleased to pick up a bottle, no matter what it is. All these whiskeys, I mean, they show different than everything else, but everything that's sitting here in front of us just drink me. And if I see a bottle of Yellowstone out there, I'd buy it.
Well, I appreciate it. We really work hard to try to put out the best thing that we can, and I'm fairly particular what I do, so I appreciate that.
What was the original MSRP on these?
Around 129, 139. We sell it for that about one. We actually had it marked wrong at the distillery because did last year's prices and they just left it, but should be 139 and 149.
Okay, great.
But we
Just so
had
you
it
guys know,
129, so you can see it any of those prices, 129 up.
So, what time of the year do you decide what finish you're going to do with the next LE?
Well, we're finishing up for next year, and I'm running late this year, so
Could we be privy to what it is?
not yet because we haven't decided 100%, and we haven't been able to see if we can get the barrels that I really want. So we'll see.
So, are you going to be releasing more bottles than this year? But this year, you're a fairly high number.
Yeah. No, I think we'll probably stick. But I'm not sure. I won't say that. I'm not sure exactly.
I mean, if I might make a suggestion, I'd love to see some like a Tokai finish on one of these or something. Like go with a little more sweeter, higher quality. See what it does, and then as well as like, I mean, if you went into some like like a Barbaresco barrel or something, I mean, you can run the gamut, and the way the liquid just morphs onto what you're
right.
I just came back to Minor Case again out of all of them because back to it. It's like it's just that much grabs me, and then I go back to look like there's the layers. I mean, just it's all really well assembled liquid. I mean, I'm blown away.
Yeah, Tokai is in the running. We'll just see where the barrels lie. So
that's a great suggestion. Tokai will be, I think, a very good finish with this.
But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Can I get another bottle of Minor Case? I'm out.
Yeah.
I will say,
that's
honey.
Case of Minor Case, I'd be fine with that for a while.
Well, like I said, you should be able to find that in any state.
Yeah, minor cases has never been a problem for me.
Yeah.
And I love the bottling. I love.
I haven't found it here.
Yeah.
Total Wine. Yeah, if you have Total Wine carries it, they're around.
Oh, do they?
The country, yeah.
So that'd be Fayette County. I could run over to Fayette County. There's one in Memphis too. I think a Total Wine in Memphis. I go down there, check that out.
But really, your local liquor store or your favorite liquor store should be able to get it as well.
Yeah, I live out in the sticks.
I got to get Astor Wines to carry it.
There you go.
Astor carries. They carry
Yellowstone.
Yeah, I've presented it to them. They can get it. Go in and tell them that you want it. So, but I call on them. I've called on them many times.
Who you talk to? Nima?
I believe so. Yes.
I'll talk to him.
Talk to a few different people there, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, New York always gets preferential treatment. I don't know why.
No, but well, the city's hard to. It's a hard market to work in.
Because they have bad pizza.
Yeah.
Pizza's very good here. I gotta admit.
Talking from I'm a Chicago boy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chicago has Chicago any day.
It's a different type of pizza. I mean,
they're way.
I mean, they're
different.
both good. They're both good. I love the Chicago style pizza as well too. But you can't beat the thin crust here.
No, but Chicago style pizza pairs well with limited edition.
Yeah.
Two words. Lou Maunetti.
Hell yeah.
I'm outnumbered here. I'm not going to continue.
So Akiba, my wife's from upstate New York, so we have like a jihad on pizza.
Yeah. Absolutely. I hear you. Listen, I split my time between Chicago and New York if I'm traveling. And I gotta tell you, Chicago's got good pizza. They really do.
No, Chicagoans have better taste bud. Let's face the fact.
So I'm just going to throw it out there since we're all talking about it. I mean, y'all need to try the Malnati spin crust, actually.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
And that's in Chicago?
Everything else,
if you want some of the best Chicago pizza, Pequods.
Oh, Pequods. I was about to say Pequods.
Oh, yes.
Yes. We have Pequods people here. We get Pequods pretty much every weekend. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not kidding. You in summers, we usually have minor case with Pequods. So I love it.
I'm coming to your house.
Yeah, please. So Pequod's is, I mean, the not one in the city. The one in Morton Grove is about a couple of miles from where I live. Yeah.
I used to work in Northbrook, so I used to go there for lunch.
Oh
all
yeah,
the time.
Pequod's is so good. Yeah.
One in the cities of better better atmosphere, but the one in Morton Grove's better pizza for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
The only thing I could suggest right now, and my wife tried it at 1 o'clock in the morning. She couldn't believe she had to wait in line for half an hour. It's called Scars Pizza in New York. When you guys,
Scars,
wherever
okay.
you guys, yeah, where you guys are over here, go to Scars.
Okay.
Oh,
There's a
where's
line-
this? Is it in the city or in Brooklyn?
No, it's in the city. It's in the Lower East Side.
Okay.
And
Manhattan
it's
area?
Manhattan is a really old Manhattan joint. It's like
Oh,
a hole
wow.
in the wall. And I met so many like celebrity chefs that scarfed a slice there. So I mean, it
Oh,
tells
wow.
you a little bit. Yeah, yeah.
Pizza and
I-
bourbon pairing.
No, one thing
it's good.
one thing I'll give to New York, they have better calzones. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah.
Steven, did you think you'd be talking about pizza?
I mean, I know I used to be a food writer, so I've traveled. Yeah.
Well, I had a pizzeria at one time
Did you?
Oh,
Really nice.
in Louisville, Kentucky. So
oh, wow. Okay.
the Louisville style pizza, so which does really well around here. So
Hmm.
Bare Nose Pizza, if you ever come to Louisville.
Oh, okay.
My brother
Yeah.
still has his.
My son's in
Oh,
Louisville.
Paul has a pizzeria of his own.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Next time I should try that. Yeah.
Yeah, you should.
It's in Louisville?
It's in Louisville. It's a small chain. There's like 14 stores. Paul's is really the best because he uses the old. He's still old school. Uses
What street's he
everything.
on?
He's on Preston Highway.
Preston Highway? Okay.
It's kind of a shady
Okay.
area now.
Yeah, it is. It's not. Hey, it's my kind
As
of
long as the
area. I
pizza's
like it.
good, it doesn't matter.
When he
Yeah.
was
I'm
there,
all about the food.
when he opened up there 30 years ago, it wasn't like that. But
Yeah. Has anyone tried pairing?
Actually, I don't think it's that bad. Actually,
I think it's not a bad idea to pair pizza with bourbon or whiskey because that'll be interesting. I haven't heard of anyone pairing pizza with. I think we should give it a try next time. Next time we'll do a pizza and a pizza tasting with whiskey.
Love it.
You know, Coco,
Charlie does it all the time.
Yeah.
actually think
Yeah, he does.
about
I live at a disadvantage here.
Yeah.
Mumford, Tennessee doesn't have pizza. I mean, we have pizza, but we have, like a Pizza Hut.
Oh.
I don't think you can really call that a pie, right?
right.
That's
Yeah.
sad. It's just
Oh,
sad.
then we'll do something with Nashville style hot chicken.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was just thinking chicken Marsala pizza with limited edition.
Yeah. So Steve, do you have any end notes?
No, just come down and visit if you're in Kentucky. I alluded to the single malt, so that's coming out first quarter next year. So excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
And how many years are you gonna? How many years in barrels that gonna set on that malt?
That's a 4-year-old single malt,
Got it.
108 proof.
No, that'll be
And you
interesting.
said that's yours.
No, that's an MGP.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.